Right before the election next week, we're here with Governor John Hickenlooper. This is your last hurrah, at least for an election standpoint.
It's my last election as governor, and I do. It's funny. I've worked harder on this one than probably anyone in the other 7 years I've been governor.
How so?
Well, I think there's a lot at stake this year, and I think with what's going on in Washington, it's been, the chaos there has kind of seeped out here a little bit, and I wanted to really push. I think. To be honest, and I'm not the world's biggest partisan, I think the Republican Party used to be for smaller government. Now they're kind of anti-any government. They didn't want public revenues to be used for, welfare, but now they don't even want new revenues to go to like transportation, roads, bridges. So it's just changed, and so that kind of, got me. We've done, I can't remember how many different events I've gone to, but a bunch.
So you referenced a lot of things that are on the ballot, and you're one of the million plus that have already turned in your ballot. Is there any one issue that gave you some pause and really you struggled with when you were voting?
Well, a lot of them. Our ballot was so long, right? So many things on the ballot that were, you had to read through them and understand them. And I have the benefit of I'm immersed in that stuff all the time, so I understood most of it. I think most of it I felt pretty clear
So
with. But
nothing that you had to question necessarily?
I questioned everything. Honest to gosh, I questioned, I'm a big supporter of 110. I think that, having an increase in taxes for transportation is necessary if you're going to have a growing economy. If you're going to have more good jobs, you've got to have that. I think that the 74 is a terrible idea. That's the one where it's a takings, and it sounds kind of good. I call it a wolf in sheep's clothing.
As do the ads.
Is that what they use? They took my line.
Yeah. No, they use a picture, and that we haven't truth tested the validity of whether that's an actual wolf in sheep's clothing or a sheep in wolf's clothing. One of the first things on the ballot is governor. Congressman Jared Polis works in Washington, D.C. Walker Stapleton has an office across from your office. What's your relation? Who do you have a better relationship with?
It's interesting. I have a good relationship independently of politics with both of them. And I am supporting Jared Polis, but I count myself as a friend of Walker Stapleton's. So it's one of those things that this is politics. You will never hear me say anything negative about Walker Stapleton. I never have. I've been through the entire campaign, I would never say a bad word about him. I like him. But I think Jared is an entrepreneur who, comes at life a little bit differently, and he's had, I think, big ideas, and they're not, it's not big ideas that are going to take a lot of money, but they're big ideas that are going to take us in the right direction.
In 8 years of being governor, twice you had Democratic-led House and Senate. 6 times you've had a split legislature. What's the worst thing about those 2 years of having a Democratic-led House and Senate?
Well, you spend an awful lot of time with the people that you're normally allied with, trying to say, well, maybe we can't do that, or maybe we can't do that. I've been a Democrat my whole life. My mother, all my grandparents, all my aunts and uncles were Republicans. My mother was widowed twice before she was 40, and she thought government should be smaller, but it had to work. So she raised 4 Democrats. In the end, I worry about when you have all Democrats, they'll go too far to the left, and they'll try to regulate everything. They'll try to help make sure every single person gets all the support they could possibly have, which we really can't afford as a state or a nation. So you kind of have to balance some of those impulses on the Democratic side in the same way that if you have, when Governor Owens, Republican, when he was in office, and for 2 years he had Republican House and Republican Senate. And if you ask him, he had he had to kind of pull them back because they wanted to go too far to the right.
How do you resist against that? Because you'll have people that say if Jared Polis becomes governor and the Democrats take over the Senate, then we're going as far left as possible.
Well, I don't think Jared Polis is going to go that far left. He's a business person. How many people before they leave college become multimillionaires? Through his own efforts, right? His parents had the greeting card company, but it was his idea to put it online and to create all that value. And he started Pro Flowers, right? He started a number of businesses. He understands what it's like to start a business. And I don't think he's going to go willy-nilly and kind of turn over the apple cart. I think he's going to be thoughtful, but push the state in good directions.
What's most surprising of having a split legislature?
It's how much time it takes. With you have to go back and forth, right, with a split legislature. When you have one legislature, well, you actually spend the same amount of time. It's just with different people.
I was going to make a comment about which people do you like better in those situations?
You learn to work with both sides, that's for sure. When you have a split legislature, you, by necessity, make sure you work with both sides.
What's the one thing in your 2 terms that you were never prepared for, that no one ever even hinted at while you were running, that said, you're going to have to worry about this? What's that one thing that you could warn the next governor, no one's told you about this yet?
You know, and both Walker and Jared are aware of this, but I don't think until you really immerse yourself, you understand what cybersecurity risk is all about. That everything we have is connected to the internet, and there are vulnerabilities that again, we're working in the state, the federal government is working to limit those vulnerabilities, but it is, I mean, as rapidly as the world's changing, there are people in other countries that want to do us harm, and they're attacking us every day through the internet, and we've got to be constantly vigilant. And I think that's something that until you're actually in the war room and you see what's going on and you understand the risks, I don't think you can be, you know, just read a paper on it and be prepared. What
kind of stuff are you talking about? Different ways that you do your email, or is this deeper than any technology that we're using, like in a newsroom or at home? It's everything. They are working on technologies that are more advanced and more dangerous, right, in terms of finding methods of attack. They'd like to, I mean, they want to take our money, right? Let's be honest. They do phishing expeditions where they will get into your email and they'll see exactly the kind of language you use every time, and then they'll make an email address that looks exactly like yours except for like one letter wrong, and then they'll have your voice perfectly, and they'll send a couple of emails, just chatting emails with this new kind of phony email address, telling one of the controller, you know, we're going to have to send a check for $140,000 over to that guy. Yeah, I know, we haven't filled the paperwork, but send it over. I'll check in on Monday. Hope Doris is doing great. And they are sitting in some sweatshop in Russia, in some basement, and they are deciphering your tone of voice and how you talk to different people and impersonating you online. I mean, we've seen this stuff. It is diabolical. Has anyone been duped at the state because of that? We were duped once, and we were able to get the money back a couple years ago. And it was one of those things where someone, and we'd just done a whole briefing and everyone had been trained on it, but they are so good. I went back and looked at the emails. You know, you could understand why the person just thought that they were being asked to do this a little bit out of the normal. And luckily, you know, the nice thing is that you can, in many cases, if you get on it quickly enough, you can trace where the money is and make sure that the money, wherever the bank is you wired the money to, it takes a certain number of a period of time there for it to clear. Is there any hesitation declaring November 1st Brownstein Hyatt Day in Colorado while they represent the Saudi government who killed a journalist and is waging war in Yemen? Yeah, well, I think what happened to Mr. Khashoggi is unthinkable, and it's hard to believe that it happened, that a foreign government would do this. You know, this was their 50th anniversary. We do this as typically for dozens and dozens and dozens of companies every year. And we don't have, I mean, certainly now we will have a process where we'll look at it more closely. We have young staff people that put this together and send it out. So I look at it, you know, it's just this one day. It's not the same day every year. It's a ceremonial recognition of companies that, I mean, we've done a bunch of them this year with all kinds of different companies. Are you still comfortable with it happening now? It happened. I mean, it's what it is, right? It is unfortunate that the timing is what it is. You know, I think it's dangerous when government, I mean, if that's what we do for all the businesses, and all of a sudden we're going to tell some of our law firms, well, you shouldn't recognize this person, you shouldn't represent this person, you should represent this person. That in itself also has problems, right? It specifically has a sentence in there talking that it's the second most successful lobbying firm in Denver, so it's calling out.
But we didn't know it read that. I mean, you got to understand, this is a ceremonial thing where they first talked to us back in September. I think September 14th is what they told me. So this was just put in the hopper and it went through and nobody paid any attention to it. Should we pay attention to it? Yes. Guilty as charged. But I mean, these things happened.
You're being investigated by the Ethics Commission to see if you've received any traveler perks that are in violation of Colorado law. And you called it in a statement last month that it's a political stunt aimed at influencing the election. How exactly? Well,
don't you think? I mean, they formed this organization 2 days before they file the ethics grievance or whatever they call the thing. They're trying to diminish whatever impact I might have during the elections. If I say vote for this person or vote for that person, they're trying to take me down a notch. Who knows? Maybe they're worried I might run for president, and they're trying to take me down for that. All I know is, you know, I try never to fly on a private airplane because it's a last resort. And there's a protocol of how you fill out forms and how you do all that stuff. And they accused us of this 4 years ago, and it was found to be baseless. And I think this time it'll be found to be baseless, but that doesn't get done. We don't get to resolve that until after, you know, well after the election. So if their goal was to somehow question my credibility, right, somehow throw some shadows over my name, right, by the time this gets resolved, it'll be after the election. I mean, it's typical old school politics.
Now, you said the word president, so I get to bring this up. Paint me a scenario where you don't run for president.
Oh, sure. I mean, I could sit down. My wife and my son decide that there's just too much, it would be too demanding on me and on our family. That's something we've had many discussions of and is not finally concluded. I mean, the funny thing is you have to go through, to keep the possibility alive, you have to go through certain steps, even as you're evaluating whether you want to do it. It could be also that someone like myself who's, you know, I try to get stuff done. I'm not as partisan as most other people that are being talked about running for president. Maybe I don't get any traction in Iowa or New Hampshire. And you know, if that's the case, it'd be stupid to go out and waste time and money doing something that's a fool's errand.
So, since we covered what you said in New Hampshire earlier this week, is the reason that you're not definitive when you're saying you're going to run for president, you are running for president, is that all financial? That the second you say that, it changes the rules on what you're allowed?
Well, I was joking. I mean, there's a store in New Hampshire called Roby's Country Store, and it's famous, right? All kinds of politicians, that's their first stop. So I walked in there and I pretended I had just come from a press announcement. And you know, some guy had a cell phone camera, was taking my picture. I was goofing around, right? If you're going to announce that you're running for president of the United States, generally you do it in a press conference. Generally you have cameras there. You're probably. There was a teenage shop person or counter person there, and I thought we were having, I was making a joke.
But you're a failed geologist turned brew pub turned accidental politician. That's your kind of style.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, it is the kind of thing that I get great pleasure from, and sometimes it bites me.
Thanks for joining me, Governor.
You bet. Good to see you.
Appreciate it.